Michael, he was working on the new screen, the L-shaped screen, yeah. So he surprised me. We were supposed to do it tomorrow. He called this afternoon, so I ran over. Yeah, ran over. We'll finish it Friday.
How many hours were you there? How many hours were you there?
PM. We'll do a countdown for the Zoom. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, the meeting of the September 13th Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission. At this time, I'd like to have a roll call of the commissioners. We'll take a moment and do that as soon as possible. Before we do that, I can advise the public that this meeting of the Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission will be conducted in person and through Zoom. The Zoom ID is 980-282-99-59654, and you can also find it through the City of Sonoma website.
It's okay.
Thank you for your patience.
Could we please have the roll call?
Absolutely. We have Commissioner Jerome.
No.
Commissioner Randolph.
Present.
Commissioner Harrisby is absent. Commissioner Cormier.
Present.
Vice Chair Johnson.
Present.
And Chair Amar.
Present. Please note we will not be accepting new items after 10 p.m. At this time, I'd like to ask if there are any comments from the public that are not on the agenda.
We have no additional public correspondence for this evening.
Thank you. Now I'd like to review and accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda as proposed.
Second.
Thank you. Now I'll ask if there's any late correspondence.
No late correspondence.
Thank you. So now we'll go to the consent calendar. And I have 5.1 minutes from the regular design review and historic preservation meetings on June 14th and August 9th, 2022. And also 5.2 request to install banners on plaza light standards, Sonoma Community Center, subject to categorical exemption pursuant to section 15311 of state CEQA guidelines on premise class 11. May I have a motion?
I move that we accept the proposed agenda or the consent calendar as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. We'll now move to the public hearing. And the first item on our agenda is 6.1. It's consideration, discussion, and possible action to direct staff to prepare a resolution to update the city's local inventory of historic sites and structures, local inventory, by adding 10 sites. The proposed amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Act, CEQA, pursuant to section 15061B3, general rule of the CEQA guidelines. May I please have the staff report?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask for just a 5-minute break to try to work out a tech issue. Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Should have brought you some lemon juice.
Would it help?
Yes.
Nice.
All right. David, can you hear us?
Christine, this is David. I can hear and see you now.
Great.
I can see you, Chair.
All right, let's try that. Is that better?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Well, I will turn this over to Director Storer for item 6.1.
Thank you. With respect to the item, I'm hoping you can hear me okay. We have before you this evening a request to provide direction to staff to adopt a resolution at your next meeting after we receive public input on the possibility of adopting another 10 sites to our local historic inventory of historic sites and structures. In the staff report, we've outlined that in 2006, the City Council adopted the local inventory of historic sites and structures, which totaled 94 sites and structures. And in the resolution that the City Council adopted, it automatically added to that list of 94 sites that have been placed on the state register. And in this case, anything that's on the national register.
Can you hear us?
Yes. Christine, this is David. I can hear and see you now. I can see you. Can you hear me, Christina?
Yeah.
Did you hear any of my staff presentation?
Yeah, no, we heard you right up until the last bit, and then it sounded like there was some feedback from your Zoom. So I think we're ready to proceed.
All right, thank you. So the city council adopted the resolution, and since then we've been adding sites to it that have totaled a number of 49. So today, as we speak, there's 143 sites and structures on our local list. The local list being different from the California register and also the national register. So at this point, we're not asking the DRHPC to do anything to the original 94 or the 49 that have been added, but to look at 10 sites that Page and Turnbull have recommended to be added to our local listing. Addition to this local listing does not automatically tee them up to get them ready for some other kind of action to be added to the state list or even to the national list. Simply, it's to recognize Sonoma's uniqueness, if you will, because the local history is important to us, perhaps more so than it would be to the people of the state of California. And so before you this evening is a request to review those 10 sites that have been prepared for our use at this time. To review, it's been reviewed pursuant to our municipal code, which is in your staff report, and also that you provide direction to staff to add one or all 10 of the sites, or none of them, if that's the case of the commission, such that we could then add that to our local register and then move forward at some point in the future to add other properties to that list as more analysis is done and we receive more recommendations from Sonoma Valley Historical Society and also the Historic Preservation League. So this concludes staff's report, and clearly the goal tonight would be to receive public input, even from those that are those property owners that are on the list of 10, such that we could then determine what form the resolution will take. We're not committed to having to have a resolution at the next meeting. We want this to be a deliberative process where we can receive public input. This has been the first time that I'm aware of that this has happened since 2006, where there's been some public review of properties locally within the city of Sonoma. I would point out that all of the 94 that were originally placed on the list in 2006 were taken from the state register. This concludes staff's presentation at this time, and be happy to try to answer any questions. Thank you. Christina, I'm not hearing anyone.
I have one. It's kind of a two-part question. So what implication is this to a property owner? So if, I mean, obviously they have some input on their situation. Is there a willingness to withdraw based on their opinion? I mean, can they just decline and say we're not interested, or what is their position? What are their options?
Well, that'll be something for us to evaluate as we receive that testimony tonight. Clearly, it would not be a good thing to force somebody onto the list, so to speak. But clearly, if the municipal code doesn't address that particular issue, it's a very brief code, and that's certainly something we can look at and report back to your commission.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, I have one. Thank you. I know the list of addresses is on the agenda tonight. I'm wondering if that list is going to be shared with the public this evening.
Yeah, the list.
Go ahead, Christian.
I was just going to say, so the list is included in the staff report, and every single property owner on the list received a notice in the mail 10 days in advance of the hearing.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina.
Are there any other questions? Seeing no more, I believe we go to comments from the public. I'm asking staff if there are any comments from Zoom at the moment.
I don't see any hands raised at the moment.
Thank you. Now I'd like to open it up to further comments from the public. If you'd like to come up and please state your name and your address. Yes, please.
We really just have a question. If you received this letter from Gloria Smith
Oh, could
at
you
all?
please say your name and your address, please?
I'm Carl Lindstrom. I'm Gloria's son-in-law.
And your address?
My address?
Yes, please.
No, I'll just.
Yeah, we can do it together. Hi, my name is Susan Lindstrom, and I am the daughter of Gloria Smith. One of her property is on your list, and we received a notice that you were talking about her property. Her property is 700 Curtin Lane, at the end of Curtin Lane. It's a beautiful farm, and we've been there, since 1974. And we just have a bunch of questions. I sent a letter, and I'm hoping that you received it. So I just want to make sure that happened. Did you get the letter? Oh, cool. Okay, so you guys have all my questions. If you got my letter, right? Okay, cool. So then you guys are going to answer those?
After public comment, staff can have an opportunity to address your questions.
Excellent. Okay, thanks. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the public at this time?
I'd like to ask one question. Staff report said that this property was not on the 2006 list of 94 properties or whatever the number was. Is there any consideration as to why it wasn't on that list? And what is the nature of, you added another 40 properties that weren't on that original list over the time period between 2006 and now. How do those come about? Is this unusual, this list of 10, or is this how the other 46 came about? Are we changing procedure? Or is this the same procedure that's always been in place? Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Madam Chair, if I can, do you have to answer the questions rather than pooling them all together at some point? With respect to the list of 94 in 2006, at that point in time, I'm not sure why or how the city council came up with that list of 94. Suffice it to say that in doing our research, we've been able to conclude that each of those sites, the 94, was on the California register. Could there have been more sites in the city of Sonoma that were on the California register that were not added as part of that 94? I don't think so. My guess is they took all of those that were on the California register at that time in the city limits and called that good, as far as being on the local listing, if you will. So as I said previously tonight, the state of California in March of 2020, for the first time, released a product or a listing, if you will, of all of the properties in the state of California that are on the California register. And that's called the BERD list, the Built Environment Resources list, so to speak, where all of these properties are on the California register. So what we did is we compared that list of all of Sonoma County, stratified that list on an Excel spreadsheet, which you have before you in the packet, where it showed the difference between the 94 that are on the BERD list and those that the state of California have added since 2006. And so that's where we came up with the additive or automatics, if you will, the 49, which takes our list to 143. And so it's not the city doing anything. The state of California has created this BERD list. We have no idea when it's going to be updated again, but we do know at that point in time in March of 2020 that this was their official list. And so what we simply did was just added those 49 to the local list of 94 that was created back in the day. So to be clear, the list of 143 sites in Sonoma are not ones that city staff has presented or even the DRHBC has added to the list. And so what you have tonight is the city staff's first list of 10 sites that very well may not even make it to a California register, but they may be unique to Sonoma for Sonoma's needs and purposes and for the purpose of preserving history. And so those are what are before your commission tonight. And again, as I stated previously, we may add one, we may add all 10 or 0, if that's the determination of the commission. Certainly we'd like to have the blessings of the property owners. I don't know if that was considered in 2006. We have very little information as to how we got to that list in 2006, that list of 94. So happy to talk more about the procedure and answer any questions if there are any more. Thank you.
Lot of the homework for you. So if your property were to come into our office today, one of the first things we would ask is for a historic resource evaluation. Those can cost time and money, and it gives a lot of certainty about what the current status of your property is. It is helpful for you as a homeowner to know what the rules and regulations are when you're designing a project, so you know what the restrictions are up front. And if you were to sell your property in the future, you've done a lot of that homework and disclosure for a potential buyer. So to me, that's a large benefit. Another benefit is that you would also potentially qualify to participate in the Mills Act, which is a program that the state has to offer financial tax benefits to properties that are listed in order to use that to maintain your property. So this is similar to some of the Williamson Act contracts that we have for agriculture. So it's a similar thought process for historic buildings.
Thank you, Christina. Do we have any other comments from the public? Again, I'll ask, do we have any other comments coming through Zoom?
No hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Well then, at this point, I will close the meeting to the public and I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. Let's start with Commissioner Randolph.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Amar. Let me ask a question before we start chatting. I wanted to direct to Christina. Would it be helpful for all of us here to hear a little about the criteria that were used to put properties on the BERD? Because it sounds like that's, from what you've explained to us in the past, that was sort of the foundation group of properties that you have been working from.
Defer that to Director Storr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're making the assumption that HRAs, as Christina just spoke about, were prepared sufficient enough for them to receive the designation that they did in 2006. And in this case, we certainly know that if you're on the National Register, you're also by default on the California Register. So in the case of the plaza, for example, the plaza is on the National Register, one of our only one. It's also on the California Register. And in 2006, it was placed on the local register. So you can see that, you know, if you're on one, you're on the other others by default. We have to make the assumption that the BERD list had the people there at the State Office of Historic Preservation had to have received enough information in order for it to qualify. It's not an easily done thing. And I'm happy to, while we're talking, I can try to pull up the status codes, if you will, that are provided on the BERD list that give us the indication as to what or how the designations were created, if that's of interest to the commission. And that's also assuming that I can share screen too.
Thank you. I'm just wondering because the first property owner who got up to speak, I'm thinking that might be helpful information for you. I'm just curious about what the property owners are, how they're reacting to all of this. So I think it would be helpful, Director Storr, if you're able to help us there a little bit.
Sure. I'll bear with me and I'll take care of that while you have a discussion.
That's where I am right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Randolph. Commissioner Cormany.
So, as I understand it, the historic property can be significant because of the property itself or the occupant of the property, or potentially both. So those are some of the considerations that are brought up when we look at this. That's what we discussed previously. So it may not necessarily be the physicality of the building. It might be who was there. That's one of the determining criteria. Is there any other thing, I mean, broadly speaking, that makes them significant that we should consider that maybe isn't widely known to the general public?
If I could just give you an example, Chair Amar and Commissioners, you may recall that we granted an entitlement to Spark for their local dispensary here in Sonoma. And as part of that evaluation of the site, there was an HRE conducted or prepared for the property that identified it as being the last building available, or a building that's still within the city that's a remnant of that prior spa or resort area. And as we know, it was last, I believe it was a Mexican restaurant, and before that an Italian restaurant. Clearly that does not make the cut, if you will, for the California register, but it may be something that's unique for Sonoma, and we're going to be doing an HRE for that. And incidentally, the cost of an HRE for that, and also the one that we've just recently received for the Montaldo property, range anywhere from $2,500 to $4,500, depending on the complexity of the historic research that's done for a given site. Just to give you an idea, hopefully that helps provide a little more context.
It up to the public. We do have some members of the public who might be able to assist with this discussion.
Thank you. Back to the public, please. Your name?
Thank you very much. My name is Alice Duffy. I'm a local architectural historian and consultant here in Sonoma Valley. There's actually a pretty easy answer to Michaela's question. And for a building or a property to be determined historic, there are 4 basic criteria that we apply to it. The first is its possible association with an event that's locally, regionally, or nationally historic. It could be associated with a historic person, again, at the local, the state, the regional, the national level. It can be architecturally distinctive. And finally, the 4th category is, it's not used very often, but it's the property's ability to yield information in the future. And generally that is mostly archaeological. So that's the quick and dirty answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll bring it back to the commission now. Vice Chair Johnson?
Thank you, Chair Marr. Having read through the list of homes and the descriptions that are presented tonight, and then knowing that there has been a large gap with the inventory list, I personally feel it's an important part of our history in this town, and I'm appreciative of all of those homeowners that are concerned about what that means for them. But I also think that through dialogue and discussion with the city, those things can be ironed out, and it sounds like it may not be as scary as what people may think, but I think it is a huge part of our town, and you're very fortunate to be living in a home that has that kind of history, and I would think that you'd want to make sure that that is preserved, and so I'm of the mind of making the recommendation to the city to move forward with these discussions with the homeowners and with the council, and figuring out the best way to proceed with those listings.
Chair Moore, I've done a share screen right now, and as opposed to Alice, this is not the quick and dirty answer, but it's the very long and windy road answer. But in the BERD list that we've been referencing, you can see here that on that BERD list, if there's a number 1 prior to the code, the status code, then you can see that it's registered in the National Register or the California Register. But then here we see category 2. We have on the list of the 94 and the subsequent 49, these are properties in category 1 and category 2. And you can see as you get further down the list of status codes, you can see that some appear to be eligible through survey evaluations or through some other eligibility process. And what we need to do is, we could talk about these other status codes. For example, there's category 7s on that BERD list. Those have not made it in the list of 94 or the 49. Again, the only ones that
It appears we're having a technical problem.
Can you hear us, David?
the state is in the process of reviewing and evaluating. Clearly, category 1s are the high value resources.
David, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. We lost you for a couple minutes there.
Oh, sorry. Can you see my screen by chance?
We can see your screen, and I think we left off going over the 1s and 2s.
Yes, so thank you, Christina. There's other categories. The 1s and 2s are those that we put into the 94 and the 49, so to speak, because the resolution says exactly that. If it's on the California Register, then it needs to be added, and that's where the 49 came from. We extrapolated those category 1s and 2s from the BERD list. We found the 94, and then the balance are the 49 that were on the BERD list of 2020. And that's what populates our 143 as we speak. And then there are 4 other codes, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, where they don't rise to the level of actually either being eligible or actually listed on either one of the 2 registers, the national or the California. And as you can see here, if you're on, for example, a 1D, and we have a lot of 1Ds in the list of 94, if you were to look at that original resolution list, you'll see those status codes on that list of 94. We didn't provide that in the packet this month. Maybe we did it the prior month, but we can certainly make that available to members of the public and yourself. But here, for example, you could see that if you've got a designation of 1D, you're part of a district where we have multiple resources. And the best case and point here is along Broadway. We have a Broadway district that has a lot of resources. And then if you're on that national register, by default, you're listed in the California register. That's why it calls it status 1. We also have, to a lesser extent, 1S's where an individual property is listed by the keeper of the federal government. And then by default, it's also listed in the California register. So if there's an interest in finding the BERD list, we could certainly provide that list, or the one that we've provided in the staff packet. We can also provide the original copy of the resolution 2006 resolution number 18. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Storer. I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Jerome.
Thank you. I share the comments and concerns that Co-Chair Johnson had on this issue, and I encourage this dialogue between the owners of those property and the city so that everybody understands what's at stake and what the benefits are to the owner or any risk before we make a decision about the finalizing this list.
Thank you. I have a couple of things to say. I agree with Commissioner Jerome as well as Vice Chair Johnson that it's something special to be considered for this list, and that's what we're here for. And this is what makes our town so special. I'm sensitive to the concerns of the homeowners themselves and how this will change the directions of some of their future plans. So I do recommend that there is some more collaboration between the city and the 10 property owners. And I do have a comment. I don't know if it's possible for, could we see the the meeting from last time, the presentation from Page and Turnbull. Is that possible for the public to view that at
Yeah.
this time?
Yeah, I can pull that up.
Yeah, I would encourage all of the property owners and anyone else who's very interested to look at this video or this discussion that we had last commission meeting with the Page and Turnbull, who we've been collaborating with and just have done an amazing job, and it's very inspirational, and I hope that you would be inspired by it, so I do recommend that as well. And I'll also say that the city is open to educating everyone on these new changes, and will continue to be informing everyone about changes coming up.
Madam Chair, if I could just make a suggestion, that would be to provide direction to staff to prepare a resolution for all 10 of the properties to be added to the local register, but also with direction for us to specifically contact each property owner to seek their input as to whether they choose to be on the list or not on the list, so that we can provide that information to you at the next meeting, and then go from that point. Because clearly the work that Page and Turnbull has done recommends that these can be added to our local list for the reasons that meet the criteria of our municipal code. But again, I think it's important to have that specific one-on-one contact so we can see what the wishes are of the property owners at your next meeting. So if that direction is given in the resolution, by resolution, to come back at the meeting, we could recommend the elimination of number 2, number 4, number 6, number 8, if that's the case, where those particular property owners choose not to be on that local register. That concludes my comments.
Thank you for that. I'll bring it back to the commission.
I have a question for staff, and would be to David. So in the previous meeting, we talked about this is kind of going outside the range. There's historic districts that have been established, and that we have an overlay map that shows the various ones, the Broadway corridor and a couple of these. Some of these properties have been determined are outside that district, which is kind of an unusual step. Can we have a little bit background on how that was determined, on where to look, or what was the thought process behind going out to these traditional historic districts?
Yeah, I'm not able to respond to how our historic overlay zone was created, other than the fact that, yes, we have a lot of, and we also have other districts that we've created, most recently, that Christina can talk about. What's clear in doing the mapping, so to speak, is we have a lot of properties that are not in the historic overlay zone. The two that I just mentioned previously, the Montaldo site and also the Grove, where the dispensary is, those are clearly not in the historic overlay zone, but clearly worthy of some local recognition, if you will, on our register. So we can certainly prepare a map. Stacy's offered to create a map for us. We can present that at the next meeting so that we can understand where the 94 are, where the 49 are, and where these particular 10 are located.
I've got the presentation here with the map, and I'll allow Alice to come back up and correct me if I say anything incorrectly. My understanding is that a historic district and the historic properties are very different things. There's different criteria to designate a district versus a historic residence or a structure. What I have noticed as a planner is that we really prioritize historic preservation in the historic overlay, and we have very little protection outside the historic overlay. So as a planner, partly as part of permit streamlining, in an effort to do some of the homework for these properties so that as developers are going through the process that they know upfront what the constraints are. So that's one huge benefit to this, is we're doing a lot of the legwork and making it very public so that when people do purchase these properties that they understand the constraints that they're dealing with, and then really trying to make sure that we are being a little bit more equal in our treatment of historic buildings. Just because the historic resource is outside the historic overlay doesn't make it any less important. And if you would be interested in opening it back up, I'm sure Alice can be a little more eloquent than me.
Thank you. I'll open it back up to the public now.
Yes, Christina, you're absolutely right. Our historic overlay district really is a safety net for the planning process. It says that buildings, within this certain area that are over 50 years old should have some special attention. However, outside of historic overlays, in general, buildings that are over 50 years old, according to CEQA and other environmental laws, require that those buildings be assessed as well. Sonoma just has the added advantage of having determined that within a certain area, don't forget this part. I would like to add that I'm delighted that we're focusing on properties outside of the overlay district, but still, as we've seen on some recent property sales, there are quite a few buildings inside the historic overlay district that have not been surveyed as well. The Sonoma League for Historic Preservation did a pretty comprehensive survey in 1978, which is nearly 50 years old. So a lot of properties that they were looking at 50 years ago didn't hit their radar as possibly historic. That inventory was updated in 1999, a little bit. 2012, they looked out in Sonoma Valley, but it really hasn't been done in 50 years. As the former president of the Sonoma League for Historic Preservation, I've been speaking to the League about how do we fill in some of those gaps within the Historic Overlay District and just within the city limits of Sonoma. And I know that the League is talking about embarking on another windshield survey, going block by block, parcel by parcel, to look at all the properties in the city of Sonoma to see yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. I did also want to make a quick point of clarification about buildings within historic districts. So specific historic districts, let's use the Plaza Historic District as an example. When in the process of creating a district, they go parcel by parcel and say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no for every property within the boundaries of that district. And that's how you have that's a very, very detailed survey. The overlay is not a historic district, it's just an overlay safety net. It doesn't have that level of detail. So there are a lot of properties within the historic overlay district that nobody's ever looked at, that are well over 50 years old, that nobody, that haven't come up. And it's been my experience working in Sonoma for about 8 years doing this, is that it's a very piecemeal process. It's a project comes before planning, it's over 50 years, they say, is it historic? I get hired to answer the 4 questions that I answered for Michaela and figure out, yes, no, do I think it is? The proposed adding buildings to the inventory is trying to streamline some of that process. Just so that we can answer some of the question up front. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to be totally inclusive. There's still going to be a lot of properties out there that aren't going to hit the radar, that aren't in this current inventory and that haven't hit the radar. So major kudos to the city for embarking on trying to beef up our 94 list. But even after that, there's still going to be quite a lot of work to be done. I don't know if that answered the question. I'm happy to answer any specific questions while I'm here. Yes, Kelly.
Thank you very much. Do you have any other questions while she's up here?
Going once. Going twice. Okay, I'm going to go sit down.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the commission now. Do we have any other questions for staff?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment that I wanted to just go on record saying I also agree with my fellow commissioners' comments about the importance of this work. And I think last time we were trying to be very grateful and thankful for the work that's been done with Page and Turnbull in the city. And we were at a pretty exciting spot here, I think. So, yeah, I'm also very persuaded to get us to get a nice motion together that includes calling for a resolution to be drawn up, and that it include interaction and collaboration with the homeowners as we go forward.
Thank you. Do I have any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, I will ask if one of you would like to make a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution to update the city's local inventory of historic sites and structures, our local inventory, by adding 10 sites, and also consideration to specifically contact the owners of these 10 properties and provide them a map.
I know, let's see. Sorry, and the resolution goes where next? we're preparing a resolution to be presented to
Yourselves.
ourselves. Okay.
Correct, David?
Okay, to ourselves. All right.
If I can just add really quickly, it was through reading the code that Christine and I focused on, wait a minute, this resolution isn't a recommendation to the council. That power has been granted by the council to the DRHPC. As you see in the staff report, that it's quite clear that you alone have the ability to add to our local register. And I think that's kind of cool. Thank you.
Recommendation to City
Right,
Council.
right. Exactly. Okay, so. Who wants it? Give it a try.
Right. I would like to move that we make a recommendation to the city to proceed with the resolution to add the 10 properties to the register, the local register, with the caveat that there is continued cooperation and communication with the owners of the homes that are listed as of now, and that we move forward in that direction.
Is there a second?
I second that.
May I please have a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Commissioner Jerome,
Aye.
Commissioner Randolph,
Aye.
Commissioner Cormany,
Aye.
Vice Chair Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Amar.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to the next item. 6.2. Discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve the design review application PN 22024 of Daniel Crowley for exterior modifications to a commercial building and sign permit application PN 21003 of Bob Sanders for a sign program located at 925 to 927 Broadway, including action to approve a categorical exemption pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, Section 15101, existing facilities. May I have a staff report, please?
I have to recuse myself from this one.
Thank you. Can you state the reason, please?
Yeah, my office is a stone's throw away from it.
Thank you. All right, well, now that he's gone. The project site, it totals 13,775 square feet, is located on the west side of Broadway, across from the Sonoma Valley High School. There's an existing building that is 3,632 square feet, which is shared by two businesses, Dirty Girl Donuts and Quick Stop. Dirty Girl Donuts totals 1,502 square feet, and Quick Stop totals 2,130 square feet. And the applicant has requested design review and a sign permit. It is in the form of a sign program, which is where we are hoping to go moving forward. So future iterations of businesses coming in and out would not require review and approval by Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission. So the requested exterior modifications would include new painting of white oleander with dark olive secondary color, recladding of the existing awning in copper. In addition to the aesthetic updates, there are repairs to the sidewalk, parking lot, accessible path of travel, and accessible parking requirements. The proposed sign program would entail 3 signs. We have 2 wall signs, one for each business, and then the existing monument sign would be redone as well. It would be smaller than the existing one and set further back from the road. And the total square footage would be 40 square feet for the wall signs, and then the monument sign is a total of 42 square feet. So the total for the aggregate sign program would be 82 square feet, which is in compliance with the code. I believe the applicant would like to have a conversation about the condition of approval requiring the monument sign to be 6 feet away from the sidewalk. That is part of our code, so we would need to consider that request at a later date. And I'm going to bring up the elevations real quick. So here is the existing on the left and the proposed on the right. Oops. That's not super helpful, but here we are with the existing signage. And here is the proposed. You see the two wall signs on the lower portion. So the wall signs would be 2 feet by 10 feet. And then the monument sign is 3 feet by 4 feet 8 inches. So here's the tenant signs and elevations of the monument sign. I think that is my last slide, so I will open it up for questions.
Do you have any questions for staff?
Just for the record, this monument sign is just replacing a sign that's already there, correct?
It's correct.
And was that sign given a permit considering the exception that we're having to consider?
So we're not considering an exception this evening.
evening,
So
yeah.
there's a condition of approval that will require the new sign to be located 6 feet away. I did speak with the applicant today, and they're interested in amending that condition of approval. But we did not notice a sign exception for this evening, so we would be approving the project as is with the recommended conditions of approval.
Great.
We can start the discussion, but it would need to come back for an amended action.
Terrific.
And so there is an existing monument sign. This would be a new sign of a smaller size in a slightly different location.
Gotcha.
And they can correct me if I'm wrong.
Are there any other questions? All right, is the applicant available, please? Would you please state your name?
Daniel Crawley. Can you hear me? Yeah, there
I
we go.
can hear you.
Cool. Perfect.
Are we good on the Zoom? Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, for working so hard to get this on the agenda tonight. I know it was kind of a last-minute push, but I do appreciate the extra attention. Thanks for considering us tonight. As Christina mentioned, we're not doing anything terribly exciting to this building. It just needs in need of a kind of a major refreshment. New light-colored paint, kind of as the major theme. Going to do a copper-colored awning over the existing awning, and sort of dark olive-colored highlights as the kind of framing color, so to speak, around the exterior. This is part of a larger kind of building permit and kind of site upgrades for accessibility purposes, from public right-of-way to the accessible entrance, new accessible parking, some kitchen upgrades, some interior upgrades that are coming in as well. So we really wanted to make sure that we're making the exterior of the building as pretty as we're making the interior of the building look. So as Christina mentioned, we're also including a signage program here, which for the most part is within applicable code. The monument sign is going to be in the same place as the previous, or as the existing monument sign. However, I think the existing monument sign is something like 7'4", and we're going to take off 16 inches of that. So moving that 16 inches away from the property line. At least that's the plan. So we can discuss that at a later date and how to move forward with that. But in the meantime, we'd like to get the site upgraded. So that would involve kind of restriping the parking lot, doing some landscape upgrades, obviously painting the building and recladding the awning, and some new signage. So it would be a shame to build out the interior without doing so, giving the exterior some love as well. And with that, that's kind of, I think that's pretty well it. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant from the commission? Seeing none, I'll ask for any public comments, please. Do we have any comments, written comments on Zoom?
Nope, and no, we didn't receive any written comments either.
Thank you. So now I'll close the meeting to the public and we'll bring it back to the commission. Thank you for your presentation. Let's see, do you have anything to add? Commissioner Randolph?
That seems very straightforward. So I have no questions.
Might I add that the renderings on screen and both in print won't do the copper any justice or the oleander white any justice. So, but I think you'll all agree that is a little bit better than the existing state of the building.
Yeah, indeed. It's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Johnson?
Thank you, Chair Marr. Yes. One thing it would have been nice but not really necessary, is to have some color samples that are a little bit truer to your proposal. But, having said that, we can move on. My thoughts, the property definitely needs some updating. The proposed changes will definitely be an improvement. And I appreciate the applicant's desire to bring the property's appearance more in line with the current Broadway corridor. That's a plus. I also like the approach to the signage program, because that is something that makes everybody's life easier. And for future tenants, the standards will be in place. As far as I know, the project seems to meet all the city requirements, compliant with city code, so I'm okay with it. And I also am okay with, well, I won't talk about the illumination, but maybe I will. I don't think that that's going to affect any residential neighbors, given the location of that property, so.
There are none in
I'm
the
fine with
area.
that anyway, so.
Yeah.
Overall, it's, as Commissioner Randolph said, it's a pretty straightforward project, and I'm okay with it.
Thank you. Commissioner Jerome?
It's a straightforward application, and I have no objection to any aspect of that, and I think it's an improvement for that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll add that this was a wonderful surprise to see this, because I zoom past it all the time. I'm like, oh, it's not the worst, but it's not the best. But this is like so refreshing and beautiful, and like I love the copper lamps. Everything is so pretty. It's gonna look like a little general store.
We think it'll help bring,
Thing.
the goal of the general plan further out down Broadway towards the high school. So
Yeah.
it's sort of a
Yeah, so I really love the project, and I'm fine with the recommended conditions of approval to let you guys figure that out. And at this time, I'll see if a commissioner would like to make a motion to approve.
I'll do it this. I move that we accept the project as submitted with your follow-up discussions on the monument sign.
I second that.
May we please have the roll call vote?
Absolutely. Commissioner Jerome?
Yeah.
Commissioner Randolph?
Aye.
Commissioner Cormany? Oh, excuse me. Vice Chair Johnson?
Aye.
And Chair Amar.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll ask Christina, do you have any items for discussion?
No items for discussion. I have a little issues update, and I'll let the director chime in if he would like to, but just wanted to take this opportunity to let everyone know that our housing element our draft is open for public comment, and we have extended the public comment period to September 16th. Just encourage everyone to take an opportunity to take a look at it. It's going to be guiding our next 8 years of housing development in Sonoma, so it's definitely an important document.
And you would find that on the city website.
Yeah, there's a dedicated housing element website. David, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, Christina, just the one thing that we made note of last night at the city council, and that is the Sonoma Developmental Center specific
that's
plan and draft EIR is available for public comment until September the 23rd. So
Yeah, we have
please
plenty
feel
Are there
free
any
to-
other issues
coming
or
up.
updates?
Yeah, we have some zoning code amendments that are going through that will probably be affecting some of the projects that the commission sees, where, as you are aware, we've been going through this effort to convert our subjective standards to objective standards, and so we'll be tackling our general development standards on Thursday night, and this ranges from creek setbacks, hillside development, lighting, landscaping, things like that. So hopefully it should make your job reviewing projects a lot easier, and we're trying to eliminate some of the redundancy and make the standards a lot clearer. So a good chunk of work that's taken a lot of collaboration with the Department of Public Works and the building department, planning department, fire department. So it's really nice to see everybody working together to try to make the rules clearer for everyone.
Wow, that's great.
Christina, this is David. Can you hear me
Great.
okay?
Do we have any more comments from the commission? Seeing none, I will adjourn the meeting at 7:57.
Okay, so where was the earthquake? Was that-
Yeah.